part 5 of a sermon for the Feast of St. Anthony by the celebrated Jesuit, Father Antonio Vieira. Part 5. We have now arrived at the third movement of light. How did St. Anthony, the first light of these lights, open and show the way, traveling from the west to the east? This, as you know, is not the typical course of the sun. However, it had to be so because Anthony was a sun that carried health in his wings. King Hezekiah asked God to assure him of his health with a sign from the sun. And what was this sign? That the sun would change its course, not traveling from east to west, but from west to east. Such was the course taken by Anthony and also the Portuguese. He from the west to the east, and they from the west to the east, because they carried the health of the world in their light. And because the sun, when it descends to illuminate the Antipodes, sets its chariot in the sea and bathes its horses in the waves, so that the Portuguese would do the same. Anthony left the land, plunged into the ocean, and began to sail, steering his thoughts and prow towards Africa, which was also the first course and the first daring of our Argonauts. But lest the phrase of the horses and chariots of the sun entering the sea seem poetic and fabulous, let us hear it from the prophet Habakkuk, who, with new and elevated style, sang it thus in chapter 3. You made a way in the sea for your horses, and your chariots brought salvation. Chariots of salvation and horses that walk on the sea, what chariots and what horses are these? What do they refer to? Well, the Portuguese in their navigations and conversion, said Jonah. But let us hear the same text first. The prophet first says that God made this way in the sea for them. You made a way in the sea for your horses, because the way the Portuguese made was a way that had not yet been made. Through seas never before navigated, God opened the way for the Portuguese, and the Portuguese opened it for other nations. They sailed without charts, for they were to make the sailing charts. Their victories mapped the lands, their dangers discovered the shallows, their experience measured the heights, their resilience examined the currents. They sailed without chart or routes, through the new seas, new climates, with new winds, new skies, and new stars. But they never lost their way or their course, because God was the one who commanded the way. You made a way in the sea for your horses. These were the intrepid and generous horses and the chariots of salvation. What were they? They were those floating cities, those mighty vessels of the first navigation to the east, which foreigners with little difference from chariots call carracks. And the prophet calls them chariots of salvation. Your chariots brought salvation because from keel to top, this is what they carried. They carried as ballast the standards of the church, and perhaps the very churches in pieces to be built there. They carried on the flags the wounds of Christ, on the mass the cross, on the compass the faith, on the anchors hope, on the helm charity, on the lighthouse the light of the gospel, and in everything salvation. Your chariots brought salvation. In this way, those new chariots of the sun entered the sea to bring light to the Antipodes. We can thus conclude that the prophet Isaiah spoke literally of the Portuguese. It is not my interpretation, nor that of any Portuguese. It is of Francis Vatable, Cornelius, Thomas Maluenda, Thomas Bozio, and others. Go, swift messengers to a nation tall and smooth, to a people feared far and wide. Isaiah 18 verse 2. as in, go quickly, Portuguese, go quickly, ambassadors of heaven, bring the light of the gospel to that people who have been waiting for 1500 years, to a nation tall and smooth, to a people feared far and wide. Go, bring the light of the gospel to that people trampled upon, to a people feared far and wide. A trampled people, a people feared far and wide. And who are the trampled people? Do not look far. They are the Antipodes who live beneath our feet. They live down below, and our feet walk above, trampling on them. Isaiah said it so elegantly as prophet. St. Augustine believed there were no antipodes. It is absurd, according to him, to say that some men from this part could have sailed to that part, crossing the immensity of the ocean, so that the human race was established there from one first man. If there are such men, Augustine argued, they are the sons of Adam. If they are sons of Adam, they must have crossed from these parts to those, navigating and crossing the immensity of the ocean. Such a passage and navigation is impossible. Therefore, there are no such men. Great glory, Anthony, of your nation, that the Portuguese managed to anchor where St. Augustine could not reach with his understanding, that the Portuguese managed to make possible with valor what the greatest understanding deemed impossible. It is for this reason Isaiah sent them more than men. Go, swift messengers, he says. Only one man passed the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa before the Portuguese. And who was it and how? It was Jonah in the belly of the whale. The whale left the Mediterranean because it had no other way, took the African coast on its left, rounded the Cape of Good Hope, skirted Ethiopia, passed Arabia, entered the Persian Gulf, landed on the shores of Nineveh on the Euphrates, and using its tongue as a plank, placed the prophet on land. In the depths he was thrown and taken by the marine monster and devoured. He was ejected after almost 3 days on the shores of Nineveh, and he preached the orders, says Sulpicius Severus in Book 1 of Sacred History. But why did the prophet make this journey under the sea, inside a whale? Why did he not make it above the water, in the same ship in which he was sailing? Because this miracle of valor and this victory of nature was not for the sailors of Tyre. God had reserved it for the Argonauts of Tagus. The Tagus was the one to dominate the sea. The Tagus was the one to triumph over the waves and the winds. The Tagus was the one to take the tridents from the ocean's hands, to lay it reverently at the feet of the Tiber. The fishing ring lacked almost 3 parts of the circle, and those the Tagus completed as gold from its sands. I am much mistaken if David did not sing it. He shall rule from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. The church will rule from sea to sea, and from the river to the ends of the earth. And what is the river that from end to end is opposed to the ends of the earth? It is the river of Lisbon, the Tagus. From the river of Lisbon, Anthony set out, and driven by the storm, he reached Italy to be the light of Europe. From the river of Lisbon, the Portuguese set out, and measuring Africa, discovering America, they reached with the light of the gospel to the ends of Asia, so that with Anthony illuminating the better part of the world, and the other Portuguese illuminating the 3 largest parts, in the union of all 4, the title of Light of the World should be entirely due to the Portuguese name, Vos estis lux mundi. Be sure to join us tomorrow for the next part. St. Anthony of Padua, pray for us. St. Anthony of Lisbon, pray for us. May God bless you for your generosity.